Prologue. Martin tied the final knot on the tie, then laid it gently on top of the deceased's chest. The royal purple, along with the suit's trim style, made this man look more dapper than he probably ever had in life. Moments like this reminded Martin why he'd become a mortician, so he could ensure people looked the absolute best at the end of their lives, to be remembered as clean and stylish and put together. The funeral goers would be amazed to see the old man like this. He was sure of it. Suddenly, the light flickered above him. Martin flinched, a sense of unease creeping through him. He loved his work, but sometimes, when he was alone with all the corpses, he had to admit it could be unnerving. Pushing that aside, Martin stood back to admire his work, then glanced around the room. A chill filled the air. Everywhere Martin looked, there were bodies in bags, laid out on tables around the morgue in neat rows. The solemn silence was interrupted only by the sound of his breath as he took in the sight. They were all waiting to be dressed for their final showing before they would be put into the earth. The distinct smell of death lingered in the room, a mixture of formaldehyde and chemicals, but Martin was used to this smell. The light flickered again. Chills ran up his spine as, for a moment, it felt colder. He glanced around at the bodies, then was hit with a sudden burst of paranoia. He needed to wash up and get out of there. Martin rushed to the sink, turning on the hot water, and scrubbed his hands and arms vigorously. As he stared at his reflection in the mirror, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The light flickered again, and this time it didn't come back on. Martin's heart raced as he fumbled for his phone, using the flashlight to guide his way back to the body of the old man he had just dressed. Then the light flickered back to life. Martin let out an exhale. He was being ridiculous. What kind of a grown man was afraid of the dark, let alone a grown man who dealt with death for a living? Get your head on, man. He took one last look around the room, making sure everything was in its place. It was time for him to go for the night. The crew would come in and move the body he had dressed into its proper casket, and that would be the end of that. But as Martin was going to leave the room, he noticed one of the cadaver drawers on the wall was slightly open. Odd, it should have been sealed shut. He slowly approached it. This was number 13. A man in his mid-40s was in there, and he would be dressed 2 days from now, so it was important that he remain chilled. The others in the room were to be dressed tomorrow, but Martin had a very specific way of keeping everything in order. He went to close the drawer and turned away, but in doing so he paused. Why was the drawer even open in the first place? He cautiously approached and opened the drawer further, peering in. Martin flinched, unsure if his eyes were tricking him. There wasn't a man inside at all. It was a woman, her eyes wide and lifeless. Her skin was pale, but her lips had color to them, almost like this was a fresh death. Martin gasped and stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked around the room, but nobody else was there. He was alone with this corpse. He glanced back at the woman's body, wondering if he was imagining things. But no, she was still there, staring back at him with those empty eyes. Martin slowly stepped nearer to examine her more closely. Her hair was dark, falling messily around her face. Martin had never seen this woman before, which was strange, considering he attended to every person that came into the morgue. A chill ran down his spine. Something strange was going on here, something sinister that he didn't understand or want to be involved in. Still, he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. He lifted her arm, feeling a coldness that made him shudder. Her skin felt like ice, and her eyes were still open, staring at nothing. But as he moved to put her arm down, his fingers grazed the back of her head.